We're turning now to Canada's immigration strategy. At a time when skeptics are questioning Ottawa's plan to ramp up immigration, a new report argues the country needs to welcome more newcomers to counterbalance its aging demographic. With me now is Randall Bartlett, Senior Director, Canadian Economics with Desjardins. Hello, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So let's start at the very beginning. Why is it important to address the issue of our aging demographics here in this country? Why do we want to counterbalance what's happening?
Well, it's important to counterbalance what's happening in terms of aging demographics in Canada because as people get older, they tend to work fewer hours and ultimately end up retiring. And so all of that input into the economy and the economic engine of Canada starts to dissipate through time. And so we have this big demographic bubble, which are the baby boomers. And so as they're retiring, the growth in economic activity is going to start to slow considerably as they leave the labor force. The other side of that is that as people age, their individual healthcare costs increase almost exponentially. And so as a consequence, not only do you get the economic growth slowing, but at the same time, you get costs rising dramatically. And so there really is this offset between those two factors. And so unless, we start increasing economic growth through higher population growth or through increased productivity, those costs as share of economic output are going to continue to rise.
So we need younger people, more younger people. Is that it?
That's a big part of it, absolutely. So we need two things. We need more younger people because younger people tend to work more and be more engaged in the labor force. And we also need people who are going to be more productive. And so we need both people with skills who are coming into the labor force who can be more productive individually, but also we need to encourage investment by businesses in terms of increasing their output per worker as well.
So the way to address this gap is to welcome more newcomers. Tell us more then about the Desjardins report looking at this very issue and why it is so important.
So the Desjardins report looks at the trade-offs between what we're seeing in terms of demands from the labor market in the short term, because right now we have a high job vacancy rate. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in Canada since the mid-1970s, and so we have this demand in the near term in the labor market. In the longer term, we have needs of more workers coming to the economy, higher productivity in order to offset the drag from aging and ensure that we have fiscal sustainability at the provincial level as healthcare costs continue to rise. But then, of course, there are these other trade-offs where you're bringing in large numbers of people in the near term and a much faster rate than we're building housing. And so this is putting upward pressure on the Canadian housing market and eroding Canadian housing affordability even more rapidly. And so there are these trade-offs to immigration. It's not a one size or one policy sort of fits all. There are these trade-offs that policymakers have to think about when they're increasing their immigration targets.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on a key point that may have a lot of people questioning bringing more people here. Just last week, we were reporting in Toronto, just one city, where refugees were coming in and there was nowhere for them to live. People were actually living on the streets. So how then do we, getting back to the first word that we use, balance, how do we balance that need with providing places for people to live?
Yeah, so we have to think about immigration as not just one group of people, but as many different types of people with different characteristics. And so when we look at immigration in Canada, so permanent residents, the majority of those, about 60%, are economic immigrants, which have phenomenally positive labor market outcomes, both in terms of their ability to find employment quickly, and then the earnings that they make afterward are very, very strong. In fact, outperforming the average in Canada. So we have very strong outcomes comes from economic immigrants, and they make up the majority of permanent residents. But most of what we're seeing in terms of the population growth right now isn't on the permanent resident side. It's on the non-permanent resident side. So that's temporary foreign workers and foreign students. And so they, particularly those foreign workers, are coming in at the request of employers to meet a short-term labor market need that they have. And so consequently, all of those folks coming in are competing for the same housing that everyone else is competing for. And so that just pushes up prices as you have strong demand, but you don't have a supply response. And so really what the federal government, I think, needs to do is not just look at its immigration policy per se, but also the admissions for non-permanent residents and the requirements for that. And they can very quickly and easily start to tighten up some of those conditions to sort of provide a bit of a relief valve in terms of the impact it's having on the housing market, which might actually force employers both or either to increase wages as they try to attract workers because they just don't have the same supply, or give them incentives to start investing in machinery and equipment that's going to boost output and productivity in Canada, which ultimately has been lagging considerably over the last decade.
Randall Bartlett, thanks so much. Randall is the Senior Director of Canadian Economics with Desjardins.